So here we have LeetCode problem number 20, valid parentheses, another classic LeetCode problem that we're going to go over. This problem shouldn't be too tricky if you're familiar with the appropriate data structure, and that data structure is a stack. Using a stack will help you find the most efficient solution for this problem. So just go over the problem statement real quick. You're given a string, and the only characters within the string are types of parentheses. So it could be the regular one, the curly one, or the square bracket. So it can be either an opening one or a closing one, but that's the only thing available in the string. And basically the open bracket must be closed by the same type of bracket. So like in this case it's true right here, because as you can see there's a regular parentheses opening and it's closed by another regular parentheses. It would be false if it was a case right here where it was a regular parentheses but then it was closed by a square bracket. Obviously that's false. That doesn't make sense, right? So just has to be basically the same type of bracket. As you can see, that test case is actually right here. So you can see that will equal false. And this is true because it's all closed by the same type of thing. Even something like this would be true because it's closed by this is closed by this, and then this square bracket is closed by this square bracket, and they're ordered correctly, right? And you got to make sure, one edge case that people don't think about often is, what if it's just opening brackets? You have to deal with that as well. This is also false, obviously, and we'll deal with that in the code later, as well as further within this explanation. So let me just create a new canvas, and I'll show you how to deal with it. So the thing is, as I said earlier, you want to use a stack, right? And let's say you're given this string here. It has this, and it has this, and it has this. And in the end, this should evaluate to true. So since it's given to you as a string, the easiest way to deal with it char by char is just simply making it into a char array, which is a given method in Java, is toCharArray. So we can just call this chars, right? And then as I said, yeah, we use a stack. So if I can make a stack right here, here's our stack. So essentially what we want to do is, if it's an opening bracket, we want to push it onto the stack. If it's a closing bracket, we want to compare it to the top of the stack, right? And then we just want, when I say compare it, you just compare it to make sure that this closing bracket is the correct type corresponding to the opening bracket, which will be on the top of the stack, since we always first push the opening brackets to the top, right? So let's say you stumble upon a closing bracket, but there's nothing on the stack. So in that case, it wouldn't happen in this case, but in that hypothetical case, you could immediately return false because the stack is empty. The closing bracket, there's nothing to compare the closing bracket to. I'll show you that in the code later as well. So let's just run through a test case. Also, we want the variable top, which we'll use when we're comparing to the closing bracket. So first iteration of the loop, we start on this element, and we're just looping through the chars. Start on this element, we say, okay, it's an opening bracket, we push it to the stack. Then next iteration on the loop, we're at the next element, we say, okay, it's a closing bracket, okay, the stack does have something in it, it's not false yet, let's compare. So all you do, you pop this off the stack, put it to the top. I can actually erase this to make it more visually simpler. So you pop it off the stack, you put it in the variable top, you say, okay, does the top variable have a corresponding closing bracket, which is the current element? In this case, it does. They're the correct types. Okay, you don't return false, you can continue through the loop, right? Okay, this is an opening bracket we've reached, so obviously you just push it onto the stack, and then you move on to the next element, which is a closing bracket, it's a square brace. So remember, if you reach a closing bracket and the stack is not empty, all you do is you pop the top of the stack into a variable called top, which is this. Then you compare this. Is this the correct type of opening bracket, and is this the correct type of closing bracket? It is. Okay, you do not return false, and you can continue on forward, right? And then it's the same thing. You always push the opening bracket onto the stack. Then you move on. That's the next iteration of the loop. You see it's a closing bracket. Okay, in this case, what do? You check, is the stack empty? It's not. There's something to compare it to. You can compare this to this. So what do? You pop this off here. You store it in a variable top, and then all you do is you check, okay, is the top variable the correct type of opening bracket that corresponds to the correct type of closing bracket, which is the current char that you're looking at, current closing bracket char. Okay, in this case it is, so you're good. You've reached the end of the loop through chars, and you can return true. And yeah, this would obviously this would work in pretty much any case, this type of algorithm, because like let's say you have this and then this, say okay, it's an opening bracket, push it to the stack, let's say the stack is here, and then you move on. Okay, it's a closing bracket, you want to pop this off the top, you put it here, and then you compare it. Is this type correct corresponding type to this type? It's not. Okay, this algorithm would return false in this case, which is the correct thing to return. Okay, and it's as simple as that, and I'll just show you how to do it in Java code. Alright, so here we are in LeetCode, and obviously the first thing we want to do is initialize our stack, because that's the main data structure that we'll be using, and it's going to be a stack of characters because we're going to be comparing each of the characters within the given string. So stack characters, and we can just call it stack, the name doesn't really matter, but yeah, so stack characters is equal to new stack, that. Alright, so now we have a stack and it's empty, and then as I said earlier, the easiest way to compare each char in the string is simply making the string into a char array. So do char chars equal s.toChar array. So that operation is really nice and easy. And now, as I said, we want to loop through each char within the string. So we could just do a simple for each loop. For char c in chars, and that should be good for our loop. And okay, based on the explanation I gave, the first thing we want to do is we want to check, is it an opening bracket? So if c equals this type of opening bracket, or, and then I can just copy paste this because it's going to be very similar, or if c equals this type of opening bracket, or if c equals this type of opening bracket. There we go. We've covered all cases. If that's the case, remember what we would do? We would just push it onto the stack. So stack dot push c. And this operation works because remember, it's a stack of characters and c is the current character in the string, essentially, right? Next thing we want to do is else if. Remember how I said so in this case, if it doesn't hit this case, that means it has to be a closing bracket based on the problem description. So if it's a closing bracket and there's nothing on the stack, we immediately know it's false because there's nothing to compare it to. There's nothing at the top of the stack that could possibly open that closing bracket, so we know it's false. So if stack is empty, return false. And then we could have one more condition, and this is the part where essentially you're just comparing the top of the stack to the current element being looked at and making sure that they're current corresponding pairs. else. So we can initialize and declare a variable called top. So char top equals stack.pop. Remember, you pop the top element of the stack, and now this is where you do your comparisons. If, let's see, if top is equal to this type of opening bracket, and C is not equal to the correct corresponding closing bracket, we can return false. And then I'm just going to copy paste this 2 more times because it's very similar code for all the other cases. Just change the type of bracket. This one will be a curly brace and a closing curly brace. This one will be a square bracket and a closing square bracket. And yeah, this should cover all our bases. And then lastly, once this loop runs, getting crazy with my brackets here. Once this loop runs, if it's not false, that means, okay, it could be true, right? But you don't want to just return true. You want to return stack is empty. Because there could be the case where, let's say the given string is just like, it's just this, just a single opening bracket. What would happen is this would run, it would push this to the stack, and then the loop would stop because that's all there is, right? So what happens here? If you return true like this, this case here would be false. This case here would be incorrect because you're supposed to return false. So easy fix, you just return stack dot is empty, and then in this case it would return false because the stack is not empty, and that's the correct return. That's the correct return value we want in that case. So here we go. Let's see if I have any syntax errors. Let's run it. Not find simple stack. Oh, I put characters instead of character. So there we go. Always there's always something. There's always something. Okay. Let's see. Accepted. So yeah, this is a O of